This is a DeMarie Productions podcast.
This is a Bill mic. Take one.
Oh, good. They put your name on it today, Bill.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you, Amelia.
Wow. She thinks you have some level of importance around here.
I was thinking we have to work in A to Z here,
A to Z.
right? It's not an accident that Amelia to Zach.
Why are you whispering?
Because I'm talking to you.
Then I'm very loud.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm going to be very sedate.
Don't do that.
Yeah, it'll help you to pop a little bit.
I don't need any help popping.
No, you really don't.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing since we did this just yesterday?
What'd you think after your first pod yesterday?
I was excited. I thought it was fun. I mean, like,
What'd you tell Abby?
probably a better version of the truth,
Yeah.
which is that we were like firing on all cylinders.
No.
No. I just told her it was a lot of fun and it was just good to be like in a studio space again. I liked being on set. I haven't done that for a while.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the fact that I'm in front of the camera doesn't, notwithstanding. What did I do last night? That's part of it. So I went home, played with the kids, read
Yeah.
some books, played some board games. They went and watched their TV. Abby and I always go into our bedroom and turn on the record player and just talk. Not always. We do this when we're like catching up on shit.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like State of the Union type stuff.
Yeah. I don't
Different
have
or
that.
same for you?
I just scroll on social media all night. Solo rider.
Do you and TikTok do the same thing?
I did, though, last night watch. I'm obsessed with Gerard Carmichael's new show on HBO. And then I put it on my social media that everybody needs to watch it.
Fun.
Yeah, incredibly
But
fun.
you didn't answer how you felt about yesterday.
Oh, I feel great about it. I feel like, 70% of like what I was hoping it would be. And the remaining 30 was like, my bad. You were wonderful. You're perfect. Money. Today.
Yeah.
I think today we're going to dive into money.
I feel bad saying this on the second episode. This will be my weakest episode.
Why do you think that?
I have a very uncomfortable relationship with money.
I think money's an uncomfortable thing.
I know.
I think my biggest starting question is like, why is it so taboo to talk about money?
I don't want to be like dramatic about it. I think when you grow up without it,
Yeah.
it has an oversized importance in your life. And I don't mean like money and the things it can buy. I mean like the way you view people who have it.
Sure.
The way you view yourself for not being in a position, the way you like even viewed your parents maybe at those, early ages and shit. So like Abby pointed this out to me last night in our discussion, having no idea that we were talking about money today. She had no idea. But she was like, you have a strange relationship with money, and people that have it, you feel like they've achieved something that you haven't, instead of just maybe like just
I don't
having a
think that's
little few
unique,
more
though.
bucks. Yeah. Well, I
think
hope
a lot
not.
of people do that.
Yeah, I hope not. And as I've gotten older and like kind of jumped a sort of a class in my life, I went from you know what I mean, like in my own
She's
shitty,
rich.
in my own shitty pitiful
Yeah.
way. Maybe it's a measure of how low the bar started, but like truly, like I've sort of transcended to a different
Yeah, well done.
class. Yeah, but still no more comfortable with it. If anything, less comfortable with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's taboo just because I have every feeling about money. I love it. I hate it. It causes me so much anxiety. I have earned millions. I have not lost, but owed hundreds of thousands. Like really, I feel like I've learned a lot about how to obtain it, how to structure it. There are times where I will then look at a digital screen and I'm like, that is literally just pixels on a fucking screen. Like, why is this such... Why did we all opt in? Why did we stop trading? Like, how did we come up with this thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there are days where I can be really peaceful with being financially insecure, but then there are days where it blinds me entirely, and I want to talk about that.
Yeah, and that was like the culmination of our conversation last night was like, who gives a fuck, right? Like there are huge problems in the world right now. So like I'm trying to stress less. I'm trying to.
Yeah, the thing that I avoid doing, and I just have never done this, is compare myself financially to other people, because if I do that, I'm doing pretty good. I'm proud about where I sit financially.
Especially for your age.
For my age, but also like how much of that is privilege that I was born into, that my family gave me a financial structure that I could build upon. When I think about who's influenced me with money, there's a couple people come to mind. First and foremost, my father. Like my dad and how he handles money is probably the leading influence about how I handle money, not because I'm replicating exactly what he did. I'm running in the opposite direction. I grew up with my dad. Like, we never needed anything, but we did not get what we wanted always. Yeah. And I was the youngest of four. I never got new things. I always got handed down stuff. A lot of my friends, I grew up in a affluent neighborhood, I would say. And like, they were all, taking big, huge trips and stuff like that. My dad was more frugal. Our version of vacation was like to pile into an RV and ride around the country. Right. Like, and I loved that. We always joke, like, he's the type of guy that would peel apart 2-ply, like to get 2 rolls, you know what I mean? How he was raised financially, it was sparse. And so he saved, and he just was a big saver. He would always make fun of us if we wanted like our Starbucks Mocha Loca, whatever is literally how he would phrase it, which always pissed me off. Like, it's a venti. It's a venti black coffee is all I'm asking for here.
And it's always iced, as I just found out.
Yeah, it is always iced. I got it. I'm gay. I'm like, oh, I want the latte, and I'm going to get the latte, or whatever it is. Again, I'm kind of doing the opposite of what I saw in him. If I want something and I have the ability to do it, I'm very proud to be able to do that. But there are times where I am investing with a more cautious eye, and that is something that I learned from him. So anyway, that's just one influence. Then when I moved to New York, I met this gentleman, Michael, who became a mentor, a friend, and my boss for a while. And he was the wealthiest person at that time I'd ever met. And he was single gay man. And how he spent his money, I was like, oh shit. He knew luxury, and he understood luxury. And for him, the definition of luxury was like things that saved him time, because he valued time over money. The majority of my influence on money is I will spend it on things that save me time. Or if there's a tiered experience level, I will opt up, if I can, to the highest tiered experience, because I do feel some sense of like, I don't like standing in a line or at the back of the theater. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm so sorry that you have to spend time with us.
I know.
Yeah.
No, with you. What do you mean?
Well, standing at the back of the theater, waiting to get on the plane. I mean, I take the subway here.
How do you get? Mere mortals.
How do you get here?
I drove. Go fuck yourself. I drove, and it cost me money in the gas.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and tolls probably.
Oh my God, this guy. Yeah, nowadays, what's up with the New York City extra
I love it. I fucking love it. I love it. I wish.
But I live below 60th, so I'm like, anytime I start my car, it's an extra $15 to drive around.
I kind of hope so. Yeah. Like, welcome to New York. You know what I mean? Like, let's all take the subway.
Okay.
Amelia and I took the subway to get here.
Well, gold star.
But at the same
you also
time,
didn't bring any of the equipment or anything like that.
No, I did not. I didn't carry.
And so if I was going to pay for an Uber, it would have cost me, $60 to get here.
Or you could have taken the train. But I'm just saying,
with boxes of books, Billiam, absolutely freaking not. Back to the topic, please. Stay
oh my God.
On
yes, please.
Topic. Money is something that I have my influences. And then also I think I influence people with money. I think that I was somebody in my friend group that attained money earlier than other people.
Yeah.
I am no longer the wealthiest friend in my friend group. I've got friends that have been way more financially successful than I am. Yeah. And I love that. I love seeing that. But amongst my friends, it's not a taboo topic. I know my friends' finances, and my friends know my finances. But the tabooness, I don't know all my family's finances because they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to talk to my family about finances either.
So my question for you is, how much money do you have, and can I have some?
You can have all of it. All of it.
Money, please.
That was another topic. If we didn't have kids, oh man, easy street, right? Not that I, of course, regret having children, but just fucking A, the stress and the anxiety that comes from, just trying to provide for your kids in a normal way, not in some kind of
a standard though of what you want to provide them. How many people in this country back into having kids with no money?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. When you say a standard, yeah, I guess everybody's got a standard. I just mean that my standard isn't private school and ski school in the winter. No. And I'm just basic, Brooklyn.
But don't you live on the park?
Yes, we live on the park, and we live in a nice apartment that I hope not to lose. That's my life's goal. You know what I mean? That's it. That's it for me. But that is my anxiety at 3 o'clock in the morning is we don't have enough.
The thing about the anxiety part of money is I did it to myself. If I wasn't so interested in investing in films or people's projects or developing things, if I just chilled, I would be fine financially.
We've all done it to ourselves. I mean, we could be living in rural Ohio.
Yeah, I know.
And
God,
not be paying, Flatbush rent, right?
I feel every couple of years that idea circulates of we could all live commune style. Yeah. The interesting thing about being an entrepreneur is not every dollar is equal, is something that I always come up and explain to people as an entrepreneur. And the other thing is that the risk that I take in investing in new ideas or developing new ideas under any of the businesses, I'd much rather have the anxiety from that risk than living with the anxiety of knowing exactly how much money I'm going to make every single year.
Which is, yeah.
That stresses me. That, like, I get that is the majority of the world that has a career, has a set number annually. But that makes me feel boxed in. That makes me feel like, you know what I mean?
It's why you're born for entrepreneurship. And it's why I absolutely am not. It doesn't mean that one can't cross the other way, you know, but it means that, like, it's why I have a fucking weather app, because I want to know what it's going to be like next Wednesday.
Right.
I don't want to wake up and be surprised.
Right.
You have that, like, where will the day take us kind of vibe, right? That just comes natural to you.
Yeah. And I have the delusion that it's going to work out.
Well, it has. I mean, it's not a delusion. Shit, it better fucking work out.
No,
but it's not a delusion. I mean, you've parlayed several small ideas into medium to big large size business.
Yeah.
BFD. You've influenced me in two ways.
Oh boy.
One
How?
is in your freedom,
grace.
freedom of travel.
Now
right?
you're gay.
Yeah, I'm super gay now. So one is in your freedom of travel.
Yeah.
And two is, you know, and it came to me post shoot in LA when we went to that winery. All these things that I would, you know, I look down from like the bottom, looking up to the top of the hill, and I say, oh, that's far too fucking extravagant or expensive. I shouldn't opt into any of these things. I won't even try for doing something like that. You're just like, yeah, you know what? Post shoot, let's all go do this, and it'll be fun. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
So you've, I think, taught me or encouraged me inadvertently to be less fucking cynical about financial reach and things like that, you know?
I think, is that a good influence?
It is a good, of course it is, because, and I'm probably painting myself to sound like some kind of fucking cheap miser.
No,
I would not at all call myself, if anything, I'm probably like,
what do you spend your money on? That's a question I've been wanting to ask.
Yeah,
you.
I mean, it's going to sound trite and shitty. Like, I spend my money on like the family stuff, right? And for me, when it comes to me, like books and shoes, that's what I buy. I get books and shoes.
Shoe game.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what I buy for myself.
Books can't be that expensive.
No, that's what I mean. I'm not
I don't even
cheap.
know.
I'm not extravagant. I'm just like the anxiety around money and always being like, well, shit, if I choose to make these choices in life, if I choose to have a 3-bedroom apartment in Park Slope, then I have to keep up the other end of that weight, right? I've opted into that, created my own stress and anxiety, but want no part of opting out of it either.
Before we have our guest, who is the lovely Tatiana, who is my personal
chef.
Yes. No,
Money
I
chef.
fucking wish.
Money chef.
She's my CPA. She's a financial advisor. She's been with me since I started my first company in 2011. She is just an expert in this space financially, and she's written a fabulous book, Dream Bold, Start Smart. And it's the book that I offer to every entrepreneur when they come and ask me for money advice, because I do not, admittedly, always make the best choices with finances. But one of the things that I do want to talk to you about as a creative is how anxiety can eclipse creativity when it comes to finances. Like, I don't consider myself on the creative level that you are on. I do have, as an entrepreneur, you have some level of creativity. Yeah. And I like to honor my creativity when it's flowing, you know, to like dig in and just be in the creative mindset. The biggest blocker to be in that mindset or to enter into it is financial stress.
Of course. First of all, we're going to cover creativity in a different pod, because I think like to talk about levels of creativity is an odd, right? Like I could talk about that for hours. How creative am I or not? I don't even want to get myself caught up in that bullshit. I just like doing what I do, and hopefully some other people like it on occasion. But what I'll say is I think for me, speaking only for myself, the best creative ideas, the most creative I've felt and sort of further away from center is with idle mind. Like in like meditative state. Doesn't need to be literally like, you know, cross legs and sitting in front of an oceanscape or something. Like, it's how many good ideas have come to you in the shower? It's because you've gone through like the rote exercise of showering. Your mind is at rest and you come up with like amazing ideas. That doesn't happen when you have looming rent, or when you're paying vendors, or when you have like, I'm chasing these invoices and I can't pay out my people until I get this fucking invoice from Bill's company X that he's working at that is slow on.
There are days where I wake up, as soon as my eyes open, I'm doing mental math about rents, outstanding invoices, money coming in.
That's why you need a Tatiana, because and look, I hope someday to meet somebody who handles both of them with like full agility, but I absolutely cannot. When I'm in like ops mind, I need to be in ops mind, and that's money and organization and structure and revenue and all that shit. When I'm in creative mind, I have to be in creative mind, and the two don't blend well for me.
It just is so stressful.
Yeah.
money is. Like it sucks. And obviously, like, there are different degrees to this. Like, we are obviously, there's a baseline here. Like, we are okay financially. There are still stresses at any, I think, level.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I just want to go back to one thing in that question. We were talking about the blend of like creativity and finances and money and all that. And like all the projects we've done together have been revenue seeking projects, right? So you have to divorce yourself from the money at some part in the process.
Explain that.
Meaning, like, I have a budget. I'm on the brand side. I have a
Yeah.
budget to go do a thing. How much can I put into creative? How much can I put into production and talent? Blah, blah, blah. And then you have to sort of like untether yourself from
Yeah.
that. Like, we've set it and forget it and just leave it to the side. I'll see it again at time and action.
Do you know how many times I wanted to tell my clients, like, I'm not asking you to cut the check.
Right.
Like, why are you being such a dick about like the smallest line item? And I get
Balls
that
are
you're
broken.
operating within a budget. But
Yeah.
then when you nitpick this stuff, like, the number is the number, you know what I mean? And I will stay within bounds on a number if that's the agreed upon, like, prior to a project, a shoot that's
Yeah.
being funded by a client. When I'm doing personal projects, I know how far over budget I'm willing to go on like the doco or something like that. But when I'm dealing with a client and they start to nitpick finances, it does get.
I'll tell you exactly why. 90-second story. We're
Yeah.
talking about like why money matters and why people like me are ball breakers on that topic, right? So this guy, CMO, my boss, has come in. He's just moved in from Berlin at Big Brand X, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's your shoot budget? When are you?" And I'm like, "I'm days out from like pressing go on this thing and like getting started." And he's like, "I want all three vendors. That I've yet to choose one. All three vendors on the phone at 4:00 today." We get on the phone, a conference call with three different production companies, and he says, "I need to know who can do it for 200,000. You have 30 minutes to come back to me on the phone." And I was like, these are people that I know. These are friends that run production companies that I've reached out to, and suddenly you have like ransom
yeah,
demands,
yeah.
right? So that's why, because there's always one of those behind us who is pushing and said, "I know I gave you 300. I need
Yeah.
you to deliver it at 225. I know I gave you 225, but I need you to cut some things because
Yeah.
we're softer over here this month."
No,
so you're
I get
always getting the screws turned to you.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, for you, we've been such great partners because I've been like, 300 is my 300. I can't go any higher
Agree.
than that 300.
But I'd rather the transparency off the top of
Yeah.
like, this is the number. Okay, great. Then that's the agreed number. And I can tell you yes or no at that number. For somebody to go through the line item budget and be like, actually, I don't think we need 3 hard drives. We could do this with 2. We'll bring
Yeah,
one from the office.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, great. You saved $217
It's a
for
little
your
vanity.
huge multi-million-dollar corporation.
So you can go back to your boss and be like, "Hey, I saved us 2,000. I brought it in 2,000 under." Right? You're
Yeah.
right. It's a pain in the it's a total
Transparency
pain
with
in the
money
dick.
is hard. I understand that for clients. Like you and I have been able to develop a relationship where we can just talk about how much
Yeah.
you are able to work with on a project. The other thing is like valuing your time in relation with money. In the beginning, I would take any job, no matter how much the profit would be. I would be like, yeah, I'll do this because I wanted the experience and I wanted like, you know, I didn't care if I earned $1, if I earned $90,
Yeah.
like, or 90,000, I should say. Then your time starts to become more valuable to you. So then I can't take every job that's only going to pay me out $5,000, $10,000 because actually this month I need to make 40. You know what I mean? So then
Yeah,
you
the
start to play
opportunity
this game
cost of- yeah,
where you
yeah.
start to say like, well, actually I can't take these smaller jobs. Whereas 3 years ago, I would have absolutely taken the job. Now it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, first of all, good for you that you're in a position to make choices, right?
But that's also a sliding scale. Like I'm back to like right now, currently, I'm back to taking like smaller jobs
Yeah.
because actually that's also the trend in the marketplace. Nobody has the $1 million budget for the commercial, or if
It's
they
a
have it, they
crazy
ain't working with me.
It's a crazy fucking marketplace right now.
And so you go back down. And so
Yeah.
that's the other, then ego starts to play a part of this where, okay, well, once I earned this much on a job and
Yeah.
now I'm going to earn a quarter of that, but it's the same quality of work, but you have to adjust yourself because that's currently the market trend.
It
It's
is,
an
but-
interesting exercise.
But you and I are part of the same food pyramid here, right? Like you can't eat because I can't eat, right? You aren't getting as much work because I don't have the work to give because
Yeah.
I'm not getting the work,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So we're all part of the same. We're all part of the same like ecosystem here.
Valuing the dollar, I think, is an interesting thing because you assign your own value to it. Other people can assign how much you're worth or valuable. Like if I'm hiring crew and somebody tells me their rate, I try so friggin' hard not to push back on their rate. It's got to be like industry in the realm
Yeah,
of what
but
is
it's your
industry
value.
standard. But it's your value. And if you've assigned that, then I want to honor that as best as I can. I always say like nobody's volunteering on a Deamery project, but there are times where absolutely. If I'm able to give you more over here above your rate on this project, that's because maybe we have an agreement that later on I'm going to need a favorable rate. But that goes back to like what we were talking about the other day about loyalty, about like, you know, you kind of know when it'll come out in the wash when you work with people over
Develop
and over
a relationship.
again, developing that relationship. But then there are times where you got to do one to, what do you say? What's your phrase?
We talked about this yesterday, one for a reel and one for a meal.
Yes.
Right? Like there's times when you're shooting a documentary that may or may not go, but it's passionate for you. And there's times where you're like, you know what, rent is due and I'm a little light in the wallet right now.
That's right.
So like, are there jobs you've taken purely for the money?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And do you regret any of those?
No, they were for money.
They were for money, yeah.
Are there jobs that you've taken?
Of course, yes. But I was going to say I do have deep regrets about chasing.
Really? Why?
Jobs. Yeah, because one, you feel like a total fucking whore, right? Because like you're like, okay, well, this has changed my life a tiny bit, but now I'm like getting calls at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday because somebody wants to just fucking yuck it up about, you know, a project or whatever. So like, have I sold my soul to the devil on that one? And then also because of ways that like, it hasn't changed my life that much. Like it's a little easier to pay rent today than it was yesterday, you know, but at the same time, like at what cost?
Oh, no. If I get introduced to a client at the right intersection of stress and like, my time is available. Yeah, I'll jump onto shit. There are also times where I'll jump onto projects that are passion-based, that have no budget, that I'm like, oh, I could do this with my eyes closed and I have the resources to do this. Like, it's not so much about the money, right?
We've had one of those recently, you and I.
Yeah, we've had a couple of those. Well, okay, so I want to talk to about some of the stuff with Tatiana as well.
That's probably a better idea.
Well, let's bring her in. Thank you so much, Tatiana, for joining us. Bill and I could sit here and lie about all of our expertise of finance or share what we do know about finance, and it'd be a very short podcast. So we thought might as well invite somebody who knows a lot about money to help share the intel. We're in good company with you today. So appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
So Tatiana and I have known each other more than you. I started my business in 2011, my first business in 2011, but we probably met a few years earlier than that through a mutual. I remember when I first started, I was very nervous about pretty much every financial aspect of business because I didn't go to business school. So I don't have an understanding of how to incorporate or what to do with taxes, but then also just general bookkeeping and stuff. So, you know, since then we've opened up several businesses together. I've shut a few down. And just, you've been a phenomenal guide to me personally about how to navigate the financial side of work and entrepreneurship.
Can I ask a question about you too, Tatiana?
Please do.
Is that fair?
I wish.
All right. So we talked the other day about like victim, savior. I forget the last one. Judge. Yes, thank you. And you were saying I try to suss that out in the very beginning. Like I don't want to work with any fucking victims, right? Like especially in the entrepreneur space. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah. In psychology, it's something called a Karpman's triangle. And the triangle is a victim, a savior, and judge. And so the idea is that a lot of people it's very easy to fall into the victim mindset. And the idea is that you're not supposed to be in the triangle to begin with. Like you're supposed to be out of it. You're not supposed to be one of the three.
Right.
Or not one is better than the other or worse than the other. What I see most often is people falling into the victim mindset. And when they are entrepreneurs or start a business with that mindset or fall into that mindset after some time, that's typically when it becomes a problem, because then their psyche, their personal life, their stress about money drives their decisions in business. And then they think that there's a magic pill, that there is a professional that you can hire or whatever who will save the day. But the reality is that there's no magic pill. It doesn't exist. And it's often, I don't want to say impossible, but close to impossible for people to accept that fact. For me as an advisor, I know my worth. And it took me a while to really understand what my worth is, to stop working with victims, but to also notice them. But now my goal is to, when I talk to people before they become clients, to weed out the victims, because...
How do you do that? Is that just like a sense that you get from people, or is there like a series of questions that you're asking?
You know, it's an art more than it is a science, for sure.
Yeah.
Typically, I talk to them, and what I find interesting is that victims often come across as these ready to jump in, people who know this is what I want, this is the result that I want, I'm ready to do what's needed. And then it's kind of like that movie Failure to Launch. They never actually follow through. It's very easy to fall into the trap of, oh my God, they're as an advisor, as a coach, oh my God, they're ready to go. They're ready to do this. They're ready to follow your advice.
Yeah, no.
The hardest part is figuring out that that's not the case.
Yeah.
That they're just in their victim mindset. And then when it's over, and it will be over and fairly soon, then they will blame you for their problems.
And maybe some overcompensation, right? When you're uncertain of yourself, when you got some insecurities around, especially business management, you sort of like, look, I'm all in. I'm a passionate person. The rest will take care of itself. When in actuality, it's the other shit that is the hardest, right?
But yeah, and I can also see a lot of entrepreneurs, like there's this sense of like, you do got to fake it till you make it. And there's a lot of like optimism in entrepreneurship, right? And so people come in with, a lot of energy being like, this is going to hit. This will make us all so much money if you just commit. And so I'm sure that you've been caught in a couple situations where people present something, you get excited or inspired, and then you're like, yeah, let's jump in and let's do the work. And then you realize, oh, actually the entrepreneur doesn't know what they're doing. And then you're left kind of holding the bag with like the actual running of the operations or the finances of the business.
What I see most often is people not paying attention to that part at all.
The finances.
Yeah. Like fake it till you make it for a long time.
Yeah. And like you said, I can buy that service. Somebody will pick that up for me, right? I just have a great idea. I'm a creative. I'm a creator. This is going to be gangbusters because no one will out-passion me. That's why it's a little bit tortoise in the hare, right? You got to have a little bit of pragmatism in this. Like getting back to it, do you remember, back in the olden days when you identified all this about Frank, was he like, you were like, this guy's super serious. This dude is bullshit. Look at this victim.
You can be honest. You can be honest.
Look at this victim walking down the street toward me right now. Like, what were your thoughts of meeting Frank the first time around?
Frank has never had the victim mindset that I've noticed.
Ayo.
Yeah.
I'm also like not the best with finances though. So I'm somewhere in the middle.
To kind of give you a little bit of an insight, more than 50% of my clientele is gay men.
Ayo.
And
she found a niche.
What I love about working with gay men is that there is rarely a victim mindset. It's, I don't know this, but it's important. Who can I hire to figure this out for me and with me?
Which actually I do often say, and not just with finances, like I am not the smartest person in the room, but I can call somebody who will be the smartest about almost any topic. That's how I built my network intentionally. And you are definitely one of the spokes of that. But it's funny to hear that that's not unique to me.
So
that
is this
other
as
people
tropey as like straight white men that won't ask for directions when they're lost? Is that is this what we're talking about? Like we think we know everything. So like, how could you possibly know?
Whereas I've heard of like the audacity of a gay man being like, I don't know this, but I can figure this out. Like absolutely.
I've met that
that's
audacity.
Yeah. I think age is an interesting concept around money and the relationship to money. I'm curious, like what is like the profile, the age of like the clients that you're working with?
I think you're my youngest.
Really?
Youngest.
Wow.
Look at you, the baby of the group.
And then all the way up to 75.
I don't even know what the average age is of like who jumps into entrepreneurship because the majority of your clients are business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm curious when people jump into entrepreneurship.
I think it's never been easier to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm not talking necessarily about the business side, like maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but I mean from the accessibility to, I could be in my basement and get a Shopify site and, be able to process credit cards and drop ship from somewhere else. And suddenly I am a one-person business, right? That it's never been easier to do that part of it. And your own marketing, how easy it is to open up like, ads library and drop a few creatives in for Facebook or whatever, right? And start acquiring customers. The back end of it, I'm sure hasn't changed in that sense. It's still no easier to be successful in business, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I know that obviously your firm offers bookkeeping, like accounting, tax filing, but then the financial advisory part is really, I think, the specialty of what you're offering clients. In that respect, you don't have a lot of clients that are on salary only, I'm assuming.
Actually, I don't work with anybody who's on a W-2.
Really? So when I think of accounting, no offense, I think like it's kind of a relatively boring job, except for when it comes to, the stereotype of accounts.
We'll talk about his life next, Tatiana.
Is that it's not the most exciting fucking job, except for when it comes to the advisory part where you can help entrepreneurs grow their business, or you could help influence and make suggestions that will help them be more dynamic.
Shape a whole new generation of gay men.
That has to be, that creativity in finance and in money has got to be the rewarding side of the job.
Funny story. So my husband's an engineer, and he, for years, has been asking me, can we please do this? Can we please do that? And I'm like, I'm not doing creative accounting. I'm not going to jail for creating creative accounting. And so eventually early this year, I realized that what I do is creative accounting. It's just not illegal accounting,
Right.
but it's definitely creative. And the accounting industry is such that over 75% of current accountants who do taxes, for people who need their taxes done by a professional, 75% of them are over the age of 65. So the accounting industry, with the enrollment falling, is coming to a very interesting, potentially huge crisis. AI will certainly be able to kind of help with some of the bookkeeping and some of the accounting and some of the tax, but 95% of what I do in tax is gray areas. It's interpreting the law a certain way to bend it slightly without breaking it.
The art, not the science kind of part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Taxes has got to be the number one thing that I hear from other entrepreneurs of like, I'm terrified. I don't want to make a wrong move, which is understandable because the risk is high if you don't follow the tax code appropriately. But this is where people rely on your expertise to help them digest it or understand it, right?
They do rely on my expertise, but I can't speak for the rest of the accounting industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's plenty of tax preparers who are cheap, but then the quality of what you get is often.
So how can an entrepreneur or anybody who's hiring a tax professional identify that a good versus a bad accountant?
I actually talk about this a little bit in my
Ayo,
book.
her book, Dream Bold and Start Smart, which we'll get into in a second.
So I talk about specifically 3 levels of accountant that you can meet. And so I am the top level of accountant. I only work with concierge clients. I only work with a small number of clients. I don't have an ego of getting more and more and more, which is typical for the accounting industry. And it's because of that, accounting became a commodity. And because of that, there formed this, what you've described before, this perception of an accounting job as
Being
a boring job.
Yeah.
And when I describe what I do, people are like, oh, wow, your job is not boring.
Right.
Because of that, because of the creative, because of the advisory. But somebody who's strapped for money, is trying to bootstrap in business initially, needs to have a licensed preparer. Let them be a typical traditional accountant who works with volume, but let them be licensed. And an enroll agent or a CPA will do the trick. You don't want somebody who has nothing to lose to prepare your taxes.
Yeah. Well, so much of your work and so much of what you just described is psychology. It's like the opposite side of what you would think an accountant would be doing, right? Like, again, going back to the tropey bullshit, like it's like the bean counter, right? With the little brim, the little visor on, and
Old
like
school.
cuffs on the sleeve, right? But so much of what you're talking about is psychology. Do you feel the same? Have you walked into these relationships knowing I'm going to be doing a lot of advisement and hand holding?
Definitely not. 75% of the work that I do is hand holding.
Yeah.
And it's important because honestly, people don't have anybody to talk to.
Yeah.
So we as accountants are obligated to be those people because we manage your most intimate part of your life, your money, your finances, your taxes, how much you keep, how much you make, how much you invest, what kind of life do you have? I certainly didn't know that. And to be a good accountant, you have to be slightly a sociopath with a little introvert in you to be a really good accountant. So it's certainly the opposite of what you would think a psychologist should be.
I think that'd be good.
Have you noticed with your clients that like over time, as you mentioned a little bit ago that you understood your value as you've progressed in your career, that most entrepreneurs don't understand even the value of how to price what they're offering, whether it be a service or a product, and
Or overvalue.
It tremendously. And do you advise clients on pricing and stuff like that?
We do something called price development.
Okay.
So like I have a client now who came specifically for price development. Somebody recommended me. They've been in business for 20 something years and they think that they're making 30% net profit on their rates that they charge for their plumbers and the rates that they pay them on that difference and minus all of the overhead expenses. But they actually aren't sure. They're never sure. And so they want me to help them not only understand where they are now with the rates that they're charging, to understand what is that profit looking like. They want me to develop the price to make sure that their rate is, first of all, different for every level of plumber or fill-in bookkeeper or psychologist, whoever you have working kind of under your license. But then how do you account for raises that happen every year? How do you account for inflation?
Variable costs and
all of those things that change, how do you incorporate them in that rate so that it's also not exorbitant, right? And people can actually afford to pay it.
Yeah, that's interesting because actually when I first started, go back and look at the original estimates that I provided you, you'll see that I comped Deamery Productions fee, which was something that I learned from Michael, how I originally met Tatiana. He had been working with the clients for many, many years.
Yeah.
And so he would comp like a small percentage of his production fee.
Yeah.
So I took that on because I was like, oh, he has a lot of clients. Like he does this, I'm going to do this. But I needed that money. Like I actually needed to charge my clients my appropriate, like a production fee to earn that revenue. And so it wasn't until you had given me the confidence, you can put a proper rate onto this estimate.
Right.
And that's when it changed for me financially. A big change for me in my business was putting the appropriate value onto the budget. You know, knowing the value, like knowing how much you're worth or knowing how to price yourself accordingly, it's gotta be the reason why some entrepreneurs or business owners or independent contractors even, like you are good, you are offering a valuable service, but it's just not priced right, which is why you're getting screwed financially.
I mean, you and I know some people in the business that we've worked with together before that also overvalue that, right? Somebody is just like, okay, you've priced yourself out of my range. I cannot support those kinds of fees anymore. And that's a choice.
I just clicked into who you're talking about.
That's a choice,
Yes.
right? It's not wrong. It's certainly not for me to make that decision for them. But I will be honest and say, like, you are too rich for my blood.
Yeah.
We don't, you know, I run a very lean business here,
Yeah.
and I can only afford, you know, a certain tier.
And there are times where somebody will price themselves above the industry rate where I'm
Yeah.
like, I will only say something to somebody if I'm like, to prevent you from looking foolish moving forward, if unsolicited advice, the top person in your industry doesn't get that rate. So you're not going to ever get that rate. I have given that advice like once
So
or
Tatiana,
twice.
what do you do with somebody that in either end? I mean, I'm sure it's easier when they undervalue their service. It's probably an easier conversation for you to say like, come on up. But what about when I'm like, hey, I know you think I should be $200 an hour, but I think I'm $800 an hour, or what, you know, whatever the analogy would be. Like, how do you have that delicate conversation with somebody of Frank's ego?
Okay.
This is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Okay.
This is knowledge versus confidence. And you can see how this first peak of super high confidence comes with very little knowledge. So the idea is when you're looking for an accountant or when you're looking for the right person for the job, the idea is to find them somewhere where they're like, oh shit, I know nothing. This is what this point is. The slowest point is I know nothing. And then you finally start recovering by, okay, I realize what my value is. I understand. I keep learning all the time. If you stop learning, you stop growing. So sometimes with an accountant, for example, you can have an accountant who's at that peak, who will have high prices because high ego, high confidence, but they actually know shit.
Yeah.
And that's the danger zone that a lot of entrepreneurs fall in because they think that high confidence and high ego is reflexive of the experience and the knowledge.
I think it's analogous in so many different types of relationship where I always want somebody that needs me about as much as I need them. So we each have some skin in the relationship, whatever it is, you know, a photographer, a production, an accountant, where my presence or my business with them means enough to them that they're going to look after it. And likewise on my side, right? So if that's at an imbalance, it just doesn't work.
And what I wanted to disagree with you on,
Yeah, let's get into this.
Fight me.
I'm a huge opponent of discounts. I believe that money and dealing with money and getting paid for the work is an energy exchange, and money is a huge energy. Anytime you ask for a better price, for a better discount, like what else can you do? But the mentality behind it, the psychology behind it is actually, I want to underpay you.
Yeah.
I never do that. Whatever the price is, I make a decision whether I can afford it at the moment or not. It's not the price of, can I squeeze more out of you? Can I take more money out of your kids' soccer games or whatever? Like, that's never a conversation for me. And I think because of that, the energy is always clean on my end.
I respect that. And I'm actually team Tatiana on this one because like, look, like in our relationship, right?
Yeah.
You give me a price and I'll tell you like either, look, that's a little richer than I can afford, or is there any fat to trim?
Right.
But I really, I learned it the hard way in a totally different walk of life. But I started my own like coaching business in cycling years and years and years ago in Central Park. And in the beginning, I was like, I don't know, $10 an hour. I'm so sorry you have to ride with me. And by the end of it, I had like waitlisted of clients, and I could probably have more or less named my price. My clientele were all like hedge fund people, right? They could afford it. It was me undervaluing the service and saying like, oh, I'm so sorry that you have to suffer through me. And I had to learn that the hard way, that like, it's not so bad, right? I have to have some amount of self-respect in there. So team Tatiana.
No, I hear you. I mean, I'm of both minds. I don't ever expect anybody to be volunteering. I expect you to establish a rate with me that is fair. And that is within the realm of what I have to offer and what you are valuing your services at.
Yeah.
When it's coming to service. I think it's also different though for product. Yes, I wouldn't ask an independent contractor or a small business owner to give me a discount because I respect that they've set these rates. I'm sure as shit gonna walk into like a Walmart or something and be like, you got a sale going on? Like, you know what I mean?
Nobody's hurting.
I'm
for
gonna
Walmart.
find where I can. I'm gonna be smart about it. But on the other side of that, I have also had people agree to a maybe less than their normal rate. And then the entire time that they're offering their service, they are bitching and moaning because, well, I'm not even getting paid appropriately on this.
Right,
it's like, whoa. Because you agreed to a number. If you agreed to the number, then I'm still expecting why I'm hiring you, like the full-throated like services. I knew you were going to say something as soon as I said that.
Is this rent
do you know what I mean? Have you ever been in this
I do,
situation? Okay, thank God. So that's what like that. It frustrates me to no end when people start to come up with like, well, I'm not even being paid for this.
Yeah.
Chill, because we agreed on a number.
That is victim mindset when they say that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't take them on as clients because I've learned. I read a book.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about because all of what we're talking about, and even like the way that I'm feeling, like I get so tense around talking about money, the anxiety of, like why? I'm sure there's like lots of answers for that, but generally in your experience, why are people so fucking anxious about talking about money? There was a quote the other day you gave us, like people are more comfortable talking about sex than about money. I think that's 1,000% correct. Think about our conversations, right?
He wants to know what I'll do. He just doesn't want to know how much he's got to pay for it.
Because he'll bitch about it the whole time. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The reason is actually very simple and very psychological. If you're not familiar, and I should probably explain just a little bit with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Of course, classic. No, I have no idea.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought you were, it is classic.
Do you?
Yeah.
This is why I'm not an expert on this.
This was fourth year at NYU.
No, I dropped out.
So it's a pyramid of needs. And at the bottom of it is our physiological needs. They need to eat, they need to sleep, they need to go to the bathroom, take a shower, whatever. That comes before anything else, right? That's the first one. The second one is the need for security, safety. The third one is the need for belonging, love, and whatever. And then the last one, the fourth one, I can't remember, but it's all about giving as opposed to getting. The top one is the self-actualization. Like I've reached certain points and I'm like, I want to give back to the community. I want to train moms to be bookkeepers or whatever it is that I do. But when you're all high and mighty, when you're trying to leave a legacy, which is why people are naming bridges after themselves and things like that, the minute there's a threat to your bottom level, the minute there's a threat to your sleep or food or
security,
whatever, you fall back down to the first, satisfying and closing those needs, closing out those needs. So the second need is the need for security, and money is directly driving that need. The need to be able to buy yourself food, to have a shelter, to have whatever it is. It's a basic human need for security. And that's why it causes people so much anxiety, because you think about, okay, I can't buy food next month. That goes right back to those first two needs.
Yeah, I get that.
So it's pretty primal in the end, right?
Yes.
Like it's a means of survival, even if in modern terms it's become really like this versus that.
Yeah.
There's got to be a divide in that, or at least a further breakdown of like the need to also keep up appearances. Like I'm curious about like people who are so anxious because it now looks like they're slipping or their competitors are making more money than they are. Like what I'm assuming causes a lot of trouble is people living above their means or
Vanity.
people trying to keep up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the third need for love and belonging. Love me, I'm good, I look good, I'm not slipping. So that is slightly above the basic need, but you certainly can see it when people make bad decisions in business. That's why I believe that business is personal. This is when the need to look good, to be loved by everyone drives your business decisions, and you get a Porsche instead of a leased Volkswagen or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
a used Subaru.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your book. So Dream Bold, Start Smart. This book you wrote 3 years ago now. It is the book that I give to every entrepreneur who comes to me for financial advice.
That you like.
That I've read,
likes.
let's be honest. I'm sure that there are others, but I gift this to a lot of entrepreneurs because you cover a lot of the nitty-gritty basics. I mean, I think like we're talking more about the psychology of finances today in some detail, but this will really dive into like step one, here's what you need to do. And also for me, I know that when I was starting out, a lot of people advised me about you should offer this product or you should develop this, you should invest your money this, you need this type of whatever coverage.
Yeah.
I wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars in spending and investing. And this wasn't like under your advice, right? This was people who were not invested in my actual success.
Yeah.
I always say, like, if it doesn't come with a check, don't pay them no mind. Like, people are free with their advice. They give it out freely, but it's really only those that are actually invested in you should you be listening to.
Yeah.
And so this book, I think, will help a lot of people cut out the noise of what they think they should do or who they're listening to. And it's just a great guide. So tell us, like, why did you write the book?
Well, the book was first meant to become a roadmap for every dreamer who wants to start a business. Because I believe to my core that the path to freedom is in entrepreneurship. And honestly, the United States was built on small business. It's still the biggest employer in the US. Entrepreneurship is what the tax code is all around. It's all about businesses and incentives. And when people come to me, and this goes back to the point where I don't work with people who work on a W-2, the reason is that there's nothing I can do for them to save them money on tax. It's just as simple as that.
It's a straightforward.
It takes out the creativity from your role you were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
Legal creative accounting.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So I wanted to create something that would encourage trial and error, that would encourage dreams. And yes, you don't always get to enjoy what you do, but you can do that on the side and build your own thing. And that's what I believe in. It should be prudent, right? You should build your business on the side first, if you can, and then dive all in. But I wanted to create something that really compiled all the mistakes that I've seen made by clients, that I've made myself, that I really saw destroy businesses. Because I mean, we're still at 50% failure rate for businesses. So this is something I would love to be able to change. But the thing is that, as my really great clients said, accountants don't start businesses. It doesn't start with numbers. It doesn't start with the business plan. It starts with an idea and with the desire and really mindset to execute.
Yeah.
And as you know, and I write this in my book, as you know, investors don't invest in ideas, they invest in people.
That's right. But this is where also one of the advices that I give other than the book is like, find an accountant, find somebody who knows finances that can actually help you with everything from pricing and value, and then the actual accounting and bookkeeping and tax filing and stuff like that. Find your money person.
Yeah, and I think particularly for you, you have a top tier CPA, right? In the
I
three
think
tiers
so.
of. And even I was just thinking as you said that about like reasons for writing the book, it comes back to your own version of Maslow's, right? Where you're like, well, I've gotten to a place in my experience in life where I want to give something back and help people through what I've seen and what I've done. I think that's really helpful.
Are there like 3 things or common mistakes that entrepreneurs fall into that you can tell us about that people can avoid?
The 2 reasons that most businesses fail are lack of market, which means bad business model, bad product or whatever, or badly packaged product. And number 2 is cash mismanagement. So those 2 are at the top of the list. Know how to manage your cash and know it yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to give you a magic pill for that. And then also make sure that your business model is solid. That's what we start in this book about. We're talking about business model. I mean, think about it this way. McDonald's main business is not fast food. It's real estate. Post office's main business is sorting. And so when you think about your business model or lack of market for your product, that's when you think about what are you truly in business of? You know, I had a mentor in business school years ago who sold a business right before online shopping became a thing. And there was catalog shopping. I don't know if you remember. I actually don't remember because I wasn't in the US at that time.
remember. I'm old enough to remember. Francis, I'll tell you about it later.
Thank you, please.
So he had a catalog business. He owned a bunch of rights to photography or whatever, kind of like think Getty Images style. He thought he was in the business of selling office supplies. What he quickly realized, and then he sold his business for millions of dollars, was that he was in business of advertising space. Because companies would pay top dollar to be on the first page or on the full page of his catalog. That's the business model, idea, or process that you should think through.
It's like understanding or developing something that's actually of value to people.
Knowing your market. Yeah. I wanted to ask a question for both of you, if it's not
Yeah.
out of left field, but like you brought this up earlier about fake it till you make it. And there's a lot of stories about that, maybe in few that are some just like, in fact, fraud, right? Well-known published documentary stories. So where's their fine line between like, look, I got to act as if, just to get this thing off the ground and help people invest or help people, buy my service, versus like, now I'm just fully fronting on everything and I don't know, I've gone a little too far out. Like, where do you think is the right pressure?
Like Elizabeth Holmes.
Yes, a great example, right? Like, I'm sure it started as a fake it until you make it. I'm sure it started as like, we're working earnestly on this product. She's in jail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it honestly, it didn't end up there.
Yeah.
So what is the right amount of fake it till you make it? Maybe from the artist pragmatist side and from the dreamer side. Tatiana's laughing, so can we let her go first?
Please.
I mean, fake it till you make it is strong, but I think, like in my mind, and this is the advice that I give to people, is fake it till you make it all you want, as long as you have money coming in from other sources.
Obviously, once you're straight up lying, then you're probably tiptoeing towards illegal, right?
Yeah.
Or you're tiptoeing towards a danger zone. But as an entrepreneur, like for me, this is where I go back to not every dollar is the same. I remember the pride that I had when somebody first cut a check based off of an idea that I was pitching to invest into me because they trusted me and they trusted the idea was sound and good enough. And these were smart business people who had experience in investing. The concept was so crazy to me because I was like, I don't know. I'm not telling you like this is for sure is going to work. This is 100% going to work out, but I'm going to give it my best. And this is the plan. And they cut the check. Yeah. And it like, that's a lot of investing and a lot of entrepreneurship happens that way. And so I was like, whoa, shit. It's an incredibly humbling process. And then I think it's like the entrepreneur's job to honor their commitment and to really try till the end to actually see it through. That's not faking it. Like in term, you try to be as transparent. The other thing that somebody told me a long time ago was like, never ever lie about the financial state of your business to an advisor or an investor, because the goal of any solid investor would be to help the entrepreneur succeed.
Right.
And if you're it's like lying to a therapist. It's like, we're never actually going to get anywhere here if you're if you're painting over. My knee-jerk reaction at the beginning of having financial investors was to paint a pretty picture that it was optimistic and going forward, it was growing and we were making moves and stuff. I was never coming to them with like, here's the pain points of my business and trying to grow and expand. And that's actually something that took a lot of energy and effort to overcome. And I think I'm better at it now. I'm still fight it, but I'm never trying to like flat out lie. Yeah. But definitely, I think people do have to paint a pretty picture to get people excited about something. Yeah. I don't know. That's my take on it.
This past year, in October, I was at an event, a health, like biohacking health related event. And they did have a Shark Tank version or whatever. Yeah. And I was very curious to see what kind of questions the investors would ask. And I'll mention something, but this is to bring a point home, to drive your point home that the investors will see right through it. Totally. They will ask you questions and they'll know immediately if you are full of shit.
When I started DeMarie Analytics, the tech company, I pitched over 100 investors. So I learned like what questions they were going to ask, the difference between angel and VC. I had to know my numbers too, like backwards and forward about like projections and all, and like truly how much money did I need to achieve a certain milestone.
So there's this idea of us being afraid of something, and I think it completely goes back to money and taxes and everything else. It's that we don't understand something fully, so we're afraid of it. We're afraid of it because it's something unknown. But once we actually start digging into something, that's when it becomes something that we should
scary.
Yeah, it's not something scary.
Is the opposite of that true? Like, do you think there is a reward these days? I'm thinking in terms of like investment, right? Business investment, a reward for people who are able to put like a real silver tongue on something with no meat behind it, right? I'm thinking folks that have like come up with an idea that altogether isn't generally that novel, but their ability to talk about that idea and pitch that idea has gotten them, steeper valuations or just more credibility than maybe the product itself deserves. Have you come across any of that?
I mean, I think it's all around us, right? But I think what's important is really to think about that no ideas that we see or hear are new.
Yeah.
Like almost ever.
Yeah.
Think about this concept of profit first. The book was a huge hit. Mike Michalowicz endorsed my book and everything. His phenomenal concept, but it's not new. It's envelope system.
Yeah.
You take 15%, you put it in this envelope. You take 10%, put it in this envelope.
I actually see entrepreneurs all the time on TikTok. They promote this. Somebody developed a book that is truly just a bunch of envelopes stapled together like in a book.
Yeah.
But the influencers are selling it like, guys, this has changed the game. And it's like, no, this is profit first. Like this has been discussed before, but it gets rebranded every few seasons.
Rediscovered also, right?
Yeah.
Like there's shit that, we are only as old and experienced as we are. And there's stuff that have been, we talked yesterday about like the marketing funnel, right? That wasn't developed in a digital era. That was developed when some guy was going door to door with steak knives or selling irons or something, right? You had to have a nice conversation before you could get them to buy a thing. It's the same fucking thing now. It just happens on Facebook, YouTube, and Google and everything, right?
I'm curious, what is the what's the first dollar that you earned? What did you guys do to get your first dollar?
Tatiana, please.
I knew that I was going to go to the US for the summer in 2002. I went in 2003. So I decided to go work for McDonald's, an American company.
Real estate company.
It's a huge real estate company.
It is.
I just learned this.
There's a book about it, actually. I didn't know that there's a book about it, but I've known it from my accounting professor.
Yeah.
Completely changed the way I look at business. But
sure.
But I went and I worked for McDonald's.
Nice. What about you?
Like childhood, my first dollar,
sure.
like legal
What'd you do
working
for your
dollar?
first dollar.
I brought in grocery carts at the, you know what I mean? Like I went out in the parking lot and probably fucked around for 30 minutes and then grabbed 7 carts and clicked them together,
nice.
Brought them in. And then I went to the end of something and I bagged a bunch of groceries. It sounds like, like Mayberry or something.
I love that.
But yeah,
mine was good old babysitting. I was a killer babysitter.
Entrusted?
When I was younger, yeah. And then my first job, I worked at Eddie Bauer. I was a retail girl. I loved that job. I can
see that. Well, Eddie Bauer?
I love that job until I know.
I don't know if you're a retail girl at Eddie Bauer.
I was for a summer, and then I lied and I to quit out of that job, and I said that I was moving to New York. Would come true later.
You faked it
but
until you
totally lied to get out of the job. I was like, bye, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'll never see you again. And I could never walk around that store again. I was so pissed because it was in the coolest mall. Do you guys believe in the concept of billionaires? Should billionaires exist?
Do you mean like dinosaurs? Like, should they or do they? They do.
No, they do.
That's why I was flummoxed.
I understand they exist,
exist,
Billiam.
Yeah, okay. Should
they?
Well, look, sorry, I'm not the expert on this. I'll just say, from a humanitarian perspective, if you're a billionaire and you stay a billionaire throughout your life, you've done a shitty job at life. That's my perspective on it, right? But that's not, I'm sure there's a more capitalistic view.
Explain that.
But the idea that you could solve, poverty in the world and you just choose not to, I'm sure it's more nuanced than that. But at its base level that exists, I mean, that is fucking criminal, So that's my perspective on it.
What do you think?
Now ask the CPA.
Pro or against billionaires?
I think they should exist.
Yeah, why that?
I'll be the devil's advocate here. Think about it this way. First, thinking that they should not exist is victim mindset. It's like, this happened to me, or this happened to whatever, and this person owes to take care of whatever. We're all, for the most part, we're all masters of our own fortune. I certainly know that as an immigrant and as a woman, been discriminated against as both. Think about it this way. I have a client who's not a billionaire, but a millionaire, and he's very comfortable, made a lot of money. And just recently I reached out to him and I said, there's a client who wants to invest X $million in the US, buy real estate. And he is a real estate expert. Residential real estate, that's his deal. And he was like, no, I'm not interested. I'm done. And I'm quoting, I'm done making other people richer. I'm like, okay. Do you realize that by having a business, by making money, you give a job, or you give the ability for your bookkeeper to feed her 3 children? Do you realize that by making money, you invest in a small business, you buy stuff from a small business where they can pay for their kids' soccer practice or their ballet lessons or whatever? I mean, what I do now is and I've done it for a few years, I try to do, I mean, not a billionaire yet, but I try to give back. And I think that's the secret to being a billionaire. The more you give back, the more you get. But you give back because you want to, not because you want to be a billionaire.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. I have a bookkeeper training. I'm passionate about moms becoming bookkeepers for two reasons. There's not enough good bookkeepers. And two, moms need the ability to be the mother that they want to be from home and make decent money and have a decent life. They deserve that. But if I don't have enough money to be able to give away a course, my course, to enough people, then how good am I?
Yeah. Just as we were talking about that new hypothesis of why money is so uncomfortable, I think it brings out the ugliness in a lot of people, right? And so maybe it's just my own personal discomfort with that. I think it very quickly takes people that are otherwise perfectly well-intentioned and puts them in a very different category from where I wish they were. Totally personal. I just mean that, like, as I think about it, you were talking about that, and I was thinking, yeah, it's not that when that guy said, I don't want to make other people richer, I don't know this man. I'm sure he's a lovely person, obviously way fucking smarter than me. But it put him in a different category in my mind when he made that statement than when you introduced him in the story. And that's sort of the hazard, I think, of talking about money so openly.
I think that the concept for me, the concept of being a billionaire has changed with, I think, my generation, but also like as I've been an entrepreneur. So when I first started out, that was the goal. Like everyone wants to talk about like, you're going to be a millionaire or a billionaire. Like you know, these are great milestones to achieve. As I've learned about how the infrastructure needed to become a billionaire and how biased it is and how it favors the privilege and it's so manipulative to become a billionaire. It's like, it's not the coolest thing anymore these days to be a billionaire. And it was, I mean, it's still talked about like, you know, I'm proud of like Beyonce and Jay-Z for being billionaires. And I'm like, you like, yes, amazing. But then you listen to somebody like AOC describe like how harmful it can be to be a billionaire. Oh, okay. I'm seeing both sides of this now in a way that I've never before. It was always like, oh, let's be a millionaire or a billionaire. Now I'm like, I don't know.
I've worked for two
No, I know.
in my life. You know, I have never been one, or have I ever really striven to be one? But like I've worked for two, and I can tell you these were deeply unhappy people, are deeply unhappy people. So, you know, it's one of those like grass is greener kind of bullshit trite sayings, but the peak inside, like there was a real value. That was what this was the guy that used to call me at 10 o'clock on a Friday night and say, you're the only dog that can run with me. And I was like, I think you have the wrong number. I don't know who this is.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know who I am.
Some of the grossest human behavior that I've seen is from billionaires.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, chicken and the egg. Does it take that kind of personality to reach that kind of wealth, or do you reach that kind of wealth and you suddenly become a big old dick? It's the latter.
Yes, I think so. And that's why a lot of people have trouble making money, is because they're afraid that money equals evil, that money equals asshole.
Yes.
Certainly has been my limiting belief. But I think they should exist, because imagine if you're a billionaire, imagine how much good you can do.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I'm like, I want to be a billionaire, is because like, oh my God, do you know how much like fun I would have giving all of that away? Like what I would do with it? You know, how many people... Like one of my favorite my favorite thing about being an entrepreneur is the fact that I get to hire people and that I get to provide salaries for hundreds, if not thousands of people over my career. And like, I'm very proud of that. But like the idea of like achieving that number and placing my happiness behind being a certain millionaire over or a certain billionaire, like that's no longer the goal. That I don't know if it ever was, but it was what I was told it should be for so long. And now that I don't think that rings true for me anymore. Dream bold, start smart. We're going to have links to where you can purchase this book. Absolutely get yourself a copy. Is there anything else where can people find you on social media?
I live on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Well, thank you so much.
Super fun and so informative. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.